It doesn't matter how small it is, because if God decides to use it, it's going to accomplish its purpose. My brothers and sisters, what does this mean in your relation to your own life? How can I take the fact that pests have purpose and relate it to my own relationship with God? Well, ask yourself tonight, can God use you to get the attention of others? Hello up in here. If God used the flies to get the attention of Pharaoh, he ought to be able to use us to get the attention of somebody. After all, somebody's already said that we're just nobodies trying to tell somebody about somebody who can save anybody. Can God use you to get the attention of somebody who needs to understand his way? Notice with me in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and beginning in verse number 19, now Paul says that he became all things to all men, that by all means he might save somebody. 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and beginning in verse number 19, Paul says, for though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. Unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without the law, as without law, not without law to God, but under the law to Christ, that I might gain them that are without law. To the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. I have made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. Can God use you to get somebody's attention? Paul said, I knew how to become all things to all men, so that I could make myself available for them to hear the message of the gospel. To the Jews I became as a Jew. To the Greek I became as a Greek. This was Paul's way of God using him to get their attention, so they could hear what they needed to hear, so they could get what they needed to get. And when you look at your own life, can God use you to get anybody's attention? Secondly, can God display his power in and through your life, so that others will know that there is a God in heaven? It was in Paul's weakness in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and beginning in verse number 7 that Paul recognized that in his weakness that God was able to make him strong, so that when people looked at what he had accomplished in his weakness, it just wasn't about him, but it was about the power of God working through him. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and beginning in verse number 7, Paul says, unless I be exalted above measure through the abundance of revelation, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee. My strength is made perfect in weakness. So therefore, Paul says, most gladly, therefore, I would rather glory in my infirmity, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong. Can God display his power through your life? That when people see what God is doing through your life, they will recognize this is nothing but the hand of God. You know, God don't always choose the strongest to fight the battle. God don't always choose the swiftest to run the race. He don't always choose the most skillful to win the fight. But see, God will take that which man laughs and scoffs at and then use it for his purpose. Who would have thought that some flies could change the mind of Pharaoh. Who would have ever imagined that something buzzing around in his ear would get so irritating to where he would call Moses and to ask your God to take away the flies? See, God, when he purposes to use something, he uses it for its full maximum capacity. Even in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and beginning at verse number 26, the Bible informs us that God doesn't always use the strong. God doesn't always use the bold. God doesn't always use the powerful. He'll choose just some weak things, and God will take that which is weak and make it strong to accomplish his purpose. The Bible says here in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and beginning at verse number 26, Paul says, "For ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise after the flesh, not many mighty, and not many noble are called." He said, "But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound things which are mighty, and the base things of the world, and the things which are despised hath God chosen, yea, and the things which are not, to bring to nothing things that are." It's those things that you overlook. It's those things that you will count as being less than nothing, that God can take and purpose it to do a great work in the midst of his hand. And so even tonight, as we look at the fact that pests have purpose, we are looking at an application of our lives to realize that my life is purposely driven by God. And even in my weak state, God can do a whole lot with me. He can do more with me in my weakness sometimes than he can in my own strength. See, when I'm strong and when I'm feeling like I got this, sometimes I'll go out on a limb all by myself. But see, when I'm laying down and I know I can't do it, when I'm laying down and I know that I'm tackling something that's bigger than I am, and when I succeed and get to the other side, I give all the glory, I give all the honor, and I give all the praise to God. Because when I am weak, I know that God knows how to make me strong. Even when I look at God's makeup of the animals, I see God's purpose. I see God's planning carefully in every meticulous detail that he put in the animal kingdom. And I got excited about that, because remember, David said in the song that I am fearfully, I am wonderfully made. I am created in the image of God. And so if God did something special for an animal, I know he got something even more special laid up for me. I mean, I looked at the porcupine and wondered why he had all those prickly pine needles all over his body. But then I looked through my spiritual eyes and I saw purpose. The purpose of the pine needles would be to ward off predators. It's to keep folk from the things from eating him that he don't want to be eaten by. I used to wonder how the armadillo had all that coat of armor on. But then I started looking through the eyes of purpose, and I noticed that the armor's purpose was to keep him safe as he travels up and down the highway. I wondered why the turtle had such a hard shell on his back. But then I looked through the eyes of purpose and noticed that when the turtle gets afraid, he don't have to run indoors, because he carries his house on his back. He can just crawl in when he don't want to deal with you no more. I used to wonder why the skunk smelled so bad. But then I looked through the eyes of purpose and saw that God gave him that deadly odoriferous smell to make predators free and run for cover. I used to wonder why the snake had so much poison in his fangs. But then I looked through the eyes of purpose and see he uses that to paralyze his prey, so that when it's time to eat, he ain't got to keep running after no rat. If he hit him one time, He gonna be still until he's full. I looked at the eagle. I wondered why he could see so good without eyeglasses. It's because when I looked through the eyes of purpose, that God gave him vision that's better than x-ray vision. And he could see miles down the road, sweep down and grab his lunch and be back up in the air before he ever know that he came down. I looked at the shark and wondered why he had so many razor sharp teeth. But when I looked through the eyes of purpose, I said this was for the shark to rip and tear apart his prey with one mealy bite.